Alright, so Dr. Cornel West, who, at least in my opinion, is one of the single best leftist, anti-imperialist, anti-capitalist political figures of my lifetime, at least, recently went on Bill Maher's show to basically completely eviscerate his entire ideology. And I wanted to run through this clip with you guys because I think this is a perfect opportunity in a number of different things, noticing the rhetoric that he uses here, how he manages to pick apart Bill Maher and actually get his very centrist milquetoast audience to clap for him on things that you wouldn't otherwise expect them to agree with. So let's go ahead and jump into this clip and I will commentate my way through it.
So that I have a certain suspicion of certain politicians who come flying in from the top with billionaire money and think somehow they're going to be messianic in terms of dealing with the mess that sometimes they actually help cause. Now, I'm not saying that in his case, but if I looked a little deeper, I might see some connections. So in that sense,
well, he wasn't in politics before this.
No, and I know, but that's what it is. As you know, I mean, the organized greed has such an impact on our electoral political system that it makes it so truncated. We got a choice between neo-fascists like Brother Trump or milquetoast neoliberals like Brother Biden. Wow, well, I'm so happy to make a world-shaking decision. You know what I mean? And you think of all the decent people in America, all the decent people in the country, how do we end up so hemorrhaged with these mediocre folk at the top?
I see Biden...
Okay, I mean, listen, already I'm not going to try to pause it too much throughout this, but they're clapping for that. I mean, this audience that has been, basically manufactured by Bill Maher to, reject any actual criticisms of a figure like Joe Biden, who has been completely pathetic in his milquetoast and neoliberal centrism, as Cornel West was just pointing out there. The fact that he can get this audience to see that it's really a false choice when you're presented with two completely terrible options like Donald Trump and, Hillary Clinton or Joe Biden. These are not real choices. Both of these people represent the same exact corrupt institutions. They represent the billionaire class, corporate America, the military-industrial complex, etc. And his point really touches on why I despise commentators like Bill Maher so much, is because not only are they smug in their condescension of any leftist critique of neoliberalism or of the Democratic Party, not only are they smug in their critique, but also they're just completely wrong on the substance, because guys like Bill Maher actually believe that milquetoast centrism is what is going to defeat fascism, when that has historically never been the case, and is also, in the modern context of the United States, is exactly what is leading to a perfect breeding ground for fascism to rise in this country. You cannot just continue to put forward politicians and leaders and presidents like Joe Biden who don't materially improve the lives of average working class people and expect that, using the big bad scary banner of fascism as in and of itself, that's going to be, able to push back against this right-wing takeover of our country. It's just not going to be enough. So, not only is he smug and condescending and annoying, but he's also just wrong on his, substantive idea of how to push back against the Republican Party. But they continue here.
But I see Biden is down with his black folks. Can I just read? I said, I've looked into this. Sure. Here's some of the things he's done.
Sure.
Appointed one of the most diverse cabinets in history. First, of course, black and female vice president. Directed federal agencies on the first day to address the impacts of systemic racism. Extended the eviction moratorium that disproportionately helped black families remain safe during COVID. Executive order to improve educational opportunities for black people.
Okay, so already paused. He's going to have another slide of lists of, things that Joe Biden has done for black people in this country. But, I mean, already look at this. Most of this, if not all of this except for one of them, is just pure virtue signaling. I mean, listen, it's great that we have the first, black Supreme Court justice. It's great that we have the first black vice president. That's all great. But, it actually matters what the underlying substance of their positions are, right? What has Kamala Harris done for black people in this country? Just putting her in a position of power is not in and of itself addressing the underlying needs of black people in the United States. It's not redressing or giving reparations to address the centuries-long oppression that they have faced in this country. It's not actually addressing their economic material realities. It's just pure virtue signaling, which again, to a certain extent, is a good thing. But if that's your entire picture, if this is the list that you are coming up with to brag about how much he's done for black Americans, and it's just putting figureheads in positions of power, that's basically nothing. And on the specifics here, the one substantive thing that is in this list on the extension of the eviction moratorium, well, let's just remind ourselves of exactly what the context was surrounding that, because you had Cori Bush, a black representative, who actually went out and literally was staying on the Capitol steps to protest this expiration that was set to come on the eviction moratorium. It took all-out pressure from Cori Bush going out there and literally sleeping on the steps of the Capitol in order to pressure Joe Biden to do this. So on the one substantive thing that's in this list, it wasn't that Joe Biden just did it out of the kindness of his heart. It was with a full-on pressure campaign that he was forced into a corner to do. So, you know, not really that impressive of a list here so far.
Barred the use of chokeholds. DOJ sued.
Barred the use of chokeholds while simultaneously advocating to use COVID funds to produce record police budgets here in the United States. Okay, great job, Joe Biden.
Georgia over discriminatory voting laws. His cash relief program cut black child poverty by 40%. And Juneteenth is now a federal holiday.
I love how he puts emphasis on that as if that's like the biggest accomplishment that black people could possibly be asking for.
And first black woman at the Supreme Court. No good?
No.
Not a
Okay, so again, on the second part of this list that he just put forward there, basically the only real substantive thing that he's putting forward here was the cash relief program that cut child poverty, black child poverty, by 40% in this country. And I'm guessing he's referring to the child tax credit, which, just as a reminder, just expired. Okay, so what are you talking about? This expired back at the beginning of the year, and the outcome of that expiration that Joe Biden allowed corporate members within his own party, Joe Manchin, namely, who said that parents were going to be using this child tax credit on drugs. Okay, completely ridiculous, you know, Reagan style talking points there. But now we have the result with the expiration of the child tax credit. Nearly half of American families with kids can no longer afford enough food 5 months after the child tax credit ended. So again, on the second slide here, the only other substantive economic policy that he was putting forward to help black Americans in this country already expired, and it expired months ago. So what are you talking about, Bill Maher?
And Juneteenth is now a federal holiday, and first black woman at the Supreme Court. No good?
No, those are wonderful, given
but why do you call him milquetoast then?
I mean, he's milquetoast because he still is tied to Wall Street. He's got crimes of foreign policy.
I know, but he's a
that
politician.
Saudi Arabia is mistreating the Yemenites folk, the Israeli crimes against the Palestinians. He's not going to say a word about. And look, he's in town right now. We just had the People's Summit, as you know.
I know.
Right across from him, right?
Well, we had the Summit of the Americas.
And what does he do with Latin America? We're on the cutting edge of human rights. We're USA in Latin America on the cutting edge of human rights with one.
Do your white guy impression again.
We are on the...
Oh, that's great.
No, but all the precious brothers and sisters in Latin America, we overthrowing democratic parties, we in friendly terms with dictators. Let's just be honest and candid, and most importantly,
yes, let's be honest and candid and say we're living in the real world. Nobody gets everything. Nobody gets everything.
He just listed out, okay? He just listed out war crimes that are being committed by Saudi Arabia with our weapons, with our technology in Yemen. He just pointed out the, overthrowing of democratically elected governments, the supporting of right-wing dictators that commit widespread human rights abuses. He pointed out the apartheid and ethnic cleansing that Israel is waging against the Palestinian people. And Bill Maher's response to that is to just shrug his shoulders and say, well, we live in the real world, and he's just a politician. That's just the way that it is. I mean, if that is your level of commentary as a political figure, okay, what are you doing here? Because the entire point of being a journalist or even a political commentator is to hold the power centers accountable, to hold the most powerful people and institutions accountable for their actions, especially when their actions are criminal actions. And his response to all of these different things, these hypocritical statements by Biden, pretending to go, to the Summit of the Americas that I covered on my channel, where he doesn't invite Cuba along human rights concerns, but then he's, having conversations with Jair Bolsonaro and, the Colombian government, which is committing widespread human rights abuses, as he's also about to go meet with Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia. All of this rampant hypocrisy, these crimes that are being perpetrated and have been perpetrated by the U.S. empire, especially in Latin America, but around the world as well, in the Middle East especially too, but all of these different things that have been committed by the U.S. empire for decades, if not centuries. And his response to that is just say, well, that's just politics. It is what it is. Why are we complaining about it? I mean, what the fuck are you doing in this space?
It's like
but you have some
you're such an absolutist.
Oh, I'm not at all.
But
an absolutist. It makes you an absolutist to be against war crimes, rampant hypocrisy, apartheid, ethnic cleansing, supporting of dictators, being against coup attempts against democratically elected governments. That's being a purist. That's being an absolutist if you are against those things. I mean, just completely deranged.
You are. I mean,
No,
okay, so...
no, not
but
really.
You're, like you mentioned, he's talking to Saudi Arabia. I agree.
He should reset the button.
Yes, of course.
They're committing crimes against the
It's a
president.
tremendous hypocrisy. He's a politician. That's what part of the gig is. Wait a second. Let me just finish.
Okay.
Yes, he doesn't want to invite the people to the heaven of the Americas.
You got New York City on your mind.
City, the summit of the Americas.
No harm in that. No harm in that. I live in Harlem.
Because he didn't invite Cuba and Nicaragua and Venezuela because they are led by dictators, which I agree is so silly, because he's about to meet with Saudi Arabia because they have the gas.
And he's got a gangster from Brazil sitting with him, meeting in private.
But if you don't get the people gas, and the people have a lot of gas already.
Yeah.
If you don't get they're going to lose badly, but they're going to lose even worse. It's just going to elect a Republican. So this is the world that we live in. People do have to make compromises, even good people.
But there's a difference between, and you know, based on your wonderful Ivy League training at Cornell University.
One of the few colleges you have not taught at.
Prudentia. Right. Phronesis. Practical wisdom is not opportunistic judgment. Just like pragmatism is not opportunism. If you make wise judgments relative to constraints, principles can be compromised, but the principles are still retained. Once you have very little principles, it's all about power, all about manipulation, all about spectacle, all about image. That's very much what American politics is about these days in both parties. Spectacle, superficial. And so when you say, well, if they're hypocrites, we got to allow for the hypocrisy. No, not at all, especially when you're bluesmen like you and I, because I know your sensibility in terms of how you wrestle with catastrophe.
All right, so I'm going to cut it off down right here. I'm going to link this all obviously down in the description if you want to go watch the rest of it. This was just one clip within his entire appearance on Bill Maher's show. But, I mean, listen, one of the things that is really the most laughable part of this at the end of that, where Bill Maher is justifying Biden's hypocrisy, justifying him going and meeting with Mohammed bin Salman of Saudi Arabia, is he says that, well, we got to get the gas. And one of the funniest revelations that I learned over the last couple of days, because I also thought that Joe Biden was making this trip explicitly to go basically get on his hands and knees and beg MBS to release more oil into the global market, thereby allowing gas prices to tamp down. Not really an effective approach in my opinion, but I thought that that was his motivation for meeting with Saudi Arabia and for completely going back on his promise to make them a pariah state. But it turns out, we just learned a couple days ago, that Biden says Israel's security and not oil prices is the key reason for his Saudi visit. So he's going to meet with Saudi Arabia, again, obliterating his credibility on human rights as if he ever had any to begin with, but obliterating your credibility on human rights, completely contradicting everything that you ran on in the 2020 campaign, and you're not even getting guarantees for lower gas prices. What is this guy doing? I mean, this is what Cornel West is talking about when he says sometimes you're going to have to, in a reasonable circumstance, you do have constraints given our political system. Of course, if we had had a President Bernie Sanders, he would not have been able to get done 100% of what he wanted to do. But compromising in that context and making compromises without overstepping these bounds and going completely off the edge in your compromising on your principles and really undercutting your principles, there's a gap there that is workable. There's a gap there between compromising and just not having any principles whatsoever. And that's what Biden is right now. And that's why, you know, I go back to my initial critique of commentators like Bill Maher, is that not only is he smug and condescending and annoying and wrong in a lot of his substantive criticisms of the left. I wouldn't even call them substantive, but not only is he wrong and smug, but he's also just completely deranged in his interpretation of how we should push back against the Republican Party. Joe Biden's approval rating right now is low, specifically, and I've talked about this numerous times on this channel, because of young Americans, namely young Americans who are to the left of Joe Biden, working class Americans who expect that they're going to get some a tiny fraction of the social spending that Biden was promising on the campaign trail. They haven't gotten barely any of it, and the crumbs that they did get have all dried up by this point. So, that's what he's talking about when he talks about Biden as a milquetoast neoliberal centrist. And that's what he's talking about when he's pushing back against Bill Maher's idea of what would be effective in challenging fascism, what would be effective in preventing Donald Trump or Republicans from winning in 2022 and 2024. His idea of that effective strategy is completely backwards. He thinks we need to be more like the Joe Manchins of the party. We need to be more like, working with Republicans. We need to be, bipartisan in our approach. We need to walk away from any massive government spending programs or, welfare for the American people. We need to push back against the radical left, and we need to move further to the right, when that is the exact precise opposite lesson that all of the data on this is telling us that needs to be done, not just in a pure sense of what are the economic needs of the American people, but also in a political sense in what the American people are abandoning ship with the Democratic Party and with Joe Biden along the lines of. Again, it's young people, it's people who are to the left of Joe Biden, it's people who have been disappointed by his half-assed agenda and his complete failure to confront the corruption within his own party, and in order to even pass that half-assed agenda. So, everything that Cornel West was saying in that clip, I think is 100% accurate and correct. And you really just see liberals exposing their asses right now in a moment like this, where, they're throwing up their hands and literally saying that accusations of war crimes or supporting dictators, overthrowing governments, supporting governments that are enacting apartheid policies and ethnic cleansing, all of that is just, it's just a matter of the political system. So, what are we going to do about it? I mean, again, if that is your stance as a political commentator or a politician in this country, get the fuck out of politics, because you have nothing substantive to say. If you have no standards whatsoever, if you have no underlying principles that you are willing to apply in your critiques of Democrats as you are Republicans, then you have nothing substantive to say. And I think this is a perfect clip, a perfect interview to show just how hollow this idea of milquetoast neoliberal centrism really is in a moment like this.